Okay, so I have this scenario, and I just want to know if this gives you the same kind of, culinary PTSD it gives me.
Uh-huh. I think I know where this is going.
It's a Tuesday.
Yeah.
You went to the fishmonger. Maybe you spent a little more than you should have on a really perfect, beautiful fillet of sea bass.
Yeah.
You feel good. You feel capable. You've got the pan. You've got the oil. The heat's on.
I can already hear the sizzle.
And it starts out great. It hits the pan, smells incredible. You're thinking, I have nailed this. And then comes the moment of truth, the flip.
The dreaded flip.
You slide your spatula under, you're expecting this beautiful clean release, and instead, you just hit a wall.
Oh, yeah. Complete resistance.
It is fused. It's
Yeah.
welded to the pan. So you panic, you start shoving the spatula, and all of a sudden you're not serving a fillet, you're serving this sad pile of white flakes. And regret. I call it scrambled fish.
It is heartbreaking. And it's one of the most frustrating things in the kitchen because, a burnt steak, maybe you can salvage it. Once fish shatters like that, it's just game over.
It's done. And for years, I just figured, okay, this is a me problem, or maybe I need a better pan. But we've been looking at this really fascinating guide today. It's just called bailey's.txt, which is just eesh.txt, and it frames the problem in a totally different way. It says frying fish isn't really art, it's a physics problem.
That's what I love about it. It just strips away all the romance and treats your kitchen like a lab. And the whole idea is that cooking fish is a battle against three things: heat, moisture, and time. If you lose, it's because you broke one of the laws of physics.
The guide actually calls it a test of patience, which I think is a very polite way of saying we're all just too impulsive.
Pretty much.
So that's our mission today. We're going to decode this triangle of heat, moisture, and time. We're going to break down why fish wants to fall apart and what specific kind of counterintuitive engineering you need to keep it in one piece.
We are officially retiring scrambled fish from the menu.
Let's start with the fish itself. The source makes this really critical point right at the start, distinguishing between red meat and fish. We kind of lump them together as protein, but structurally, they're not even in the same league. Why is a steak so much more forgiving?
It really just comes down to biology, to evolution. I mean, think about a cow. Its whole life is a fight against gravity.
Right.
So it needs these dense muscle fibers, tons of strong connective tissue, collagen, just to stand up. And that structure, it stays there when you put it in a pan. You can flip a steak 10 times, you can poke it. It's going to stay a steak.
It has its own internal integrity.
Exactly. Now, a fish lives in water. It's basically weightless. It doesn't need to fight gravity. It just needs to flex to swim. So its muscle fibers are really, really short, and they're held together by this incredibly weak connective tissue.
So it's barely holding itself together to begin with.
Right. And the source has this brilliant line. It says, "Fish does not hold itself together. It relies on you to hold it together. The second you apply heat, that weak tissue just dissolves. It's gone." So if you don't create an external structure for it, gravity and heat will just dismantle the whole thing.
So it sees falling apart as its job.
It's looking for any excuse to do it, yeah.
So the goal then, according to this text, isn't just to cook it. The word used is sealing. You have to literally engineer a container out of the fish's own surface before the inside just gives up.
You're building a crust, a structural shell. And if you try to move that fish before that shell is fully built, you're trying to move a liquid with a spatula.
Okay, so we need the shell. But the source lists these specific mistakes, it calls them hatas, that stop the shell from forming. And the first one is the enemy we probably all underestimate: moisture.
Wet fish is enemy fish. That's the first rule.
Right, and I think most of us know not to drop a soaking wet fillet into hot oil, because of the splatter. But the text says the problem is way deeper than just safety. It connects moisture directly to sticking.
And this is where the physics gets really interesting. Because you'd think, okay, the pan's hot, the water will just burn off, right?
Right.
But it's all about the timeline. When that surface water hits the pan, it instantly turns to steam.
And usually steam is a good thing, right? Like that light and frost effect where water dances on a hot pan, it creates a cushion.
In a perfect world, yes. But here, that steam expands between the fish and the metal. And this is the really counterintuitive bit. That steam layer actually cools things down. It drops the temperature of the oil right at that contact point.
So instead of searing, you're steaming it.
You're steaming it. And because the proteins aren't hardening instantly, which is what a sear is, they stay soft, they stay sticky, and they settle into all the little microscopic pores in the metal of your pan.
Oh.
Then, as the water finally does evaporate, Those proteins dry out while they're inside the pores.
So you haven't just stuck it to the pan, you've mechanically locked it into the pan.
You've dovetailed it. It's a physical bond.
That explains why it feels like it's been welded on. Okay, so the paper towel ritual that the source talks about isn't just a suggestion, it's mandatory. But it's also really specific about how you dry it.
Oh, it's obsessive. Most people, they pat the top, pat the bottom, call it a day. But the source makes a huge deal about the edges, the vertical sides of the fillet.
Wait, why the edges? They aren't even touching the pan.
Capillary action and gravity. While the fish is sitting there, any moisture on those sides can wick down onto the cooking surface. It reintroduces steam right at the perimeter of your sear. That's why fish often sticks around the edges first.
So you have to dry the top, the bottom, and then run the paper towel around the sides.
Every single millimeter. If that paper towel isn't coming away bone dry, you're not done. The text says this one step, just getting rid of that steam, solves probably half of all disintegration problems.
Okay, so we've engineered a perfectly dry fish. Now we got to talk about the hardware, the thermodynamics. The guide has some pretty strong opinions about most home cookware.
It basically says if your pan is thin and lightweight, you've already lost.
This is the cold pan error, but it's not just about forgetting to preheat the pan, is it? It's about thermal mass.
Exactly. You can get a thin aluminum pan screaming hot, but aluminum is terrible at holding on to energy. Its heat capacity is low. So the second you place a cold piece of fish from the fridge into it,
The temperature just crashes.
it plummets. It drops way below the temperature you need for a sear. And now, instead of that instant hardening of the proteins, the fish is just sitting in lukewarm oil. It starts to release its own juices.
And we're right back to the steam problem.
So back to steam, back to sticking, back to scrambled fish. You need a pan with some heft. Cast iron, a heavy-bottom stainless steel, something that can store enough thermal energy to absorb the shock of that cold fish and just keep going.
It's a heat battery, not just a heat conductor.
That's the perfect way to put it.
Now, speaking of what goes in the battery, let's talk about the fat matrix. I feel like this is always a debate. Butter for flavor, but it burns. Olive oil is safe, but maybe not as tasty. The source recommends a mix.
The Pro Mix, yeah. A base of olive oil with a little knob of butter added in. And the chemistry on this is actually really smart.
So why not just use something like clarified butter or a different oil with a high smoke point?
It's all about flavor complexity. Butter has milk solids in it, right? Proteins and sugars. When they brown, you get that nutty, amazing beurre noisette flavor. It's perfect with fish. The butter's smoke point is really low, like 350 Fahrenheit. Burns in a second.
So the olive oil acts as a buffer.
It kind of raises the smoke point of the whole mixture. By diluting the butter in the larger volume of oil, you give those milk solids a chance to brown and develop flavor without just instantly turning into black, bitter charcoal. You get the best of both worlds.
Okay, and the visual cue. The guide says don't wait for smoke. If I'm not looking for smoke, how do I know the pan's actually ready?
You look for movement. You look at the oil's viscosity. As oil gets hotter, it gets thinner, more fluid. You're looking for it to shimmer, to have ripples.
The wave.
The wave, exactly. When you see that oil start to ripple across the pan, that's the sweet spot. You're hot enough to sear on contact, but you're not so hot that you're just burning everything.
All right. We've got the dry fish, the heavy pan, the rippling oil. We place the fish in, and now we enter the psychological part of the mission, the part the text calls the panic.
This is where human instinct completely works against the physics.
The stick and release cycle. This part blew my mind because I always thought if the fish sticks at all, I've failed. But the source says, no, sticking is part of the plan.
It's completely unavoidable, even on a perfectly seasoned pan. When those raw proteins hit that hot metal, there's an initial chemical bond. It's going to grab on.
And that's the exact moment every cook panics. You feel it grabbing, you think, oh no, I have to save it.
And trying to save it is what actually destroys it. Because if you scrape at it with a spatula during that initial bonding phase, you're just tearing that fragile, half-formed crust right off the fillet.
You're skinning it alive.
You literally are.
So you just have to let it stick.
You have to wait for what's called the carbonization release. As that sear develops, the proteins on the surface carbonize. They change chemically. And once they're fully carbonized and hardened, they lose that sticky quality. They dry out and they just separate from the metal on their own.
The pan lets go of the fish.
The pan lets go. You don't pry the fish off.
That requires so much trust. I mean, you're standing there, the oil is spinning, you're convinced it's burning. How do you know the difference between it's searing and it's burning to a crisp?
That's where the spatula test comes in. And it's a very gentle test. You slide the spatula towards the fish, just nudge it a tiny bit. If you feel any resistance at all, like it's anchored, stop. Don't force it. If it's pushing back, the fish is telling you, I'm not ready yet. Step away for another 30 seconds. Then try again. It's a feedback loop. When it's ready, it will slide. It'll feel like it's on ice.
It's amazing how much of this is about reading the food instead of just imposing your will on it.
Cooking is a dialogue. It's not a monologue. You have to listen.
Let's talk about execution, especially with skin on fish. The source calls the skin natural armor.
And if you have a skin-on fillet, you are basically playing on easy mode, as long as you use it right. You always start skin side down.
Because the skin is tougher, obviously.
It's more than tough. It's a thermal shield.
Mm.
The skin can handle much higher direct heat than the flesh can, so it acts like an insulator. You can do 70, even 80% of the cooking just on the skin side. The heat radiates up gently and cooks the delicate flesh without ever exposing it to the, direct violence of the pan.
That brings up a technique it mentions for super thin fillets, like flounder or sole, unilateral cooking.
This is a total game changer for delicate fish. If a fillet is thin enough, you just never flip it. You cook it 100% on one side.
Zero flip risk.
Zero. You just rely on that radiant heat to cook the cod through. You can baste it with some of the hot oil from the pan if you want, but you completely eliminate the risk of that structural collapse. And you just slide it out. Crispy skin, perfectly cooked top.
And if you do have to flip something thicker, like a piece of cod, there's a specific instruction on spatula use. Never press down.
Oh, I see this all the time. People press down on the fish with the spatula, thinking it'll make it sear faster or something.
Like they're making a smash burger.
Right. But a fish is not a burger. Remember, those muscle fibers are full of moisture. When you press down, you are literally squeezing that moisture out.
Which goes right back into the pan.
Creates steam, lowers the temperature, and stops the sear. You are actively sabotaging yourself. Not to mention you're mechanically crushing those delicate flakes. You just slide under, gentle flip, and then leave it alone.
It really is a complete system, isn't it?
Right.
You can't cheat on the drying, you can't cheat on the pan, and you absolutely cannot cheat on the timing.
You break one leg of that triangle, the whole thing just collapses.
I want to go back to the end of the source text because it ends on this note that feels almost philosophical. We touched on it. Don't fight the fish. Wait for it.
The chef's golden sentence.
It frames the whole thing not as an act of force, but as a kitchen agreement.
That phrase really stuck with me too, an agreement based on patience. We're so conditioned to think that cooking means doing something. Stirring, flipping, shaking the pan. We think activity equals progress.
But in this one case, the most productive thing you can possibly do is stand completely still and do nothing.
Which is so hard, to just stand there and trust the physics while your brain is screaming, check it, move it. That takes real discipline.
So if the fish falls apart, it's not the fish's fault. It's giving you feedback.
It's saying, you rushed me, or you didn't give me enough heat to build my shell. It's immediate, honest feedback on your process.
We try to keep these deep dives focused, but I can't help but see a bigger metaphor here.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
It makes you wonder how many other delicate things in life fall apart because we tried to flip them before they were ready.
That's a profound thought. We blame the material, right? Oh, this project is too hard, or this person is just impossible to work with. But how often is the real problem our own timeline? We tried to force a result, that release, before the foundation was properly set.
We scraped at it when we should have just waited.
We didn't trust the process. We stepped in because we were anxious, and our intervention is what caused the failure.
So the lesson from the kitchen tonight is pretty clear. The next time you're standing over that stove, staring at a fillet of fish, and you feel that little panic, that urge to intervene.
Don't. Just trust the thermodynamics.
And trust the paper towels. For me, that's the big one. I'm going out and buying stock in paper towel companies.
Seriously.
Yeah.
If you remember one thing through this deep dive, make it this. Dry. The edges.
So here's your assignment. Go buy one nice fillet, get out your heaviest pan, get that oil rippling, and just try to execute that perfect hook. See if you can fight the urge to flip until a pan finally lets go of the fish.
And enjoy the beautiful sound of not scraping.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll catch you on the next one.
Happy cooking.